Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Social Contract, a Commander podcast. I'm Mike Allman, and joining me is my co-host, Alex Lapp. Alex, what's up, man?
Hey, Mike. Not too much. Happy to be here. And
Today,
we're going to talk about staple removing, but no, it's not the famous EDH Rec article series by Jalen. This is staple removing for the purposes of putting in a group hug staple or a political staple.
It's like deck tape. It's deck tech staple removal replacement effect. We're gonna call this a replacement effect. Also, hey, I think we figured out the episode title. But yeah, we're looking at some of the more common cards for the most part that are considered staples in the format. And hey, how about we make these a little bit more fun, a little bit more social contract worthy,
and often quite a bit cheaper.
Oh yeah, no, I went through the list to start with, and then went, okay, cool. Let's see how many decks that each of these are in, and then also noticed a prominent theme with a couple of exceptions. But yeah, this is a lot of variants. I think we're almost going to catch up on, with all the set reviews. We haven't done a whole lot of can I see that segments lately.
Oh, we're gonna do 10 of those.
Yeah. We're gonna hit those in a kind of ridiculous order here.
Although very few of these are under 1,000 decks.
Yes, there are a couple, but we're talking 1% or less on just about every card, with the exception of like 3. Either way, there's a lot here. And we're going to try and make your decks a little bit more interactive with the people at the table and have some fun with it. So, Alex, do you want to start us off? What card do you want to hit first, and what are we changing it to?
Well, Mike, I think it'd be most appropriate to start with Sol Ring, which is by far the most popular card in the format. I think everybody knows that. Its staple doesn't even cover it. I mean, people say that there's only 99 cards in your deck, and the 100th card is Sol Ring. Now, I don't subscribe to that, but that's a choice that I make on a deck-by-deck basis to power down my decks. I think that if you're trying to make a deck of nominal power, Sol Ring is probably going to go in there. But what if we don't want to make the most powerful deck? What if we want to make a more fun deck? What options do we have to replace Sol Ring, but not necessarily remove its functionality from the deck itself?
Well, I mean, we have this is the theme for the actual Social Contract podcast, right? Like, Veteran Explorer is kind of our mascot, if any card is going to be our mascot for sure at this point. So just to go through it, you've heard us talk about it 1,000 times. It's still
just the best.
1 green for a 1/1 human soldier scout. When Veteran Explorer dies, each player may search their library for up to 2 basic lands and put them onto the battlefield. Then each player who searched their library this way shuffles it. There are a few 1-mana search for 8 lands cards.
Gosh.
And it's a death effect, so if you recur it, it can get ridiculous. It is one of those fun things that if you play this turn 1, turn 2, turn 4, turn 6, it really doesn't matter. It's fun. It gives everybody the opportunity to say, hey, we're going to go fast this game. We're going to have a fun time.
Yeah.
And I get, you've said several times, Veteran Explorer is your Sol Ring in a couple of things.
It is, yeah.
And I've loved that theme. And that's actually what kind of inspired this whole episode. Because, hey, you can do the powerful thing. You can do the what you're supposed to do thing. But sometimes it's really fun to do the weird thing or the interactive with the table thing and the, hey, does anybody want to hit this for me?
Exactly. I mean, when you think about it, and this is really our whole ethos, the game is more fun when everybody at the table is engaged with the game. Their deck is functioning. They're able to do the plays that they're trying to do. That doesn't mean that everyone's going to win. That just means
Right.
that everybody has a fair shot to actually see their deck work, regardless of whether they're a perfect deck builder or they brought a meta deck. Things like Veteran Explorer, especially as a one-drop creature, allow sort of this start the game with a bang effect. When you turn one of Soul Ring, everyone's like, oh, well, great, you're going to start the game with a bang. But with Veteran Explorer, it's like, oh, okay, well, this game's going to start for everyone quite a bit faster. People will be able to get their commanders out faster.
Yep.
It's just a great card.
We just got to make sure that you can deal 1 damage to this thing. That's all we need for everybody to start cooking. Soul Ring is one of those cards, they've reprinted it 1 billion upon 1 billion times, and it is absolutely a staple, like you said. It's still like a $2 card because people always
ubiquitous.
need it.
Yeah.
I mean, Veteran Explorer it's in just under 3,700 decks. It's a quarter.
It's a criminal small number.
So let's go on the other side of the spectrum here, because we also have a 1 mana, quote unquote, card that can get you a bunch of lands as well as everybody else. Differently though, Collective Voyage is one of those cards that every time that I do end up casting it, it might not always work out in my favor exclusively, as far as like everybody's going to get a benefit, but I've never regret casting it. 1 mana sorcery that has joined forces. Starting with you, each player may pay any amount of mana. Each player searches their library for up to X basic land cards, where X is the total amount of mana paid this way. Put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle their library. So this can be real simple. Just, okay, I'm going to play Collective Voyage and I'm going to tap for 2 mana. How much do you want to go? How much do you want to go? And it goes around the table. And you know what? Worst case scenario, if you're the person that paid 3 mana to give everybody 2 lands, that's not terrible. But if you want to get insane, this can be a turn 3. Hey everybody, let's go. I love this card. I always have.
Yeah, this is a very nice card. Unlike Soul Ring and Veteran Explorer, this has received only a single reprint. It was in Commander 2011 and Commander 2016. So it's creeping up there in price. But that said, this card is, as long as you're using your words with the table, right? Because Group Hug isn't just a game about running a deck full of friendly cards. It's also about using those cards as part of a social tactic. And part of that is encouraging people that, in a way, we are all on the same team, and that team is, let's all try to have a fun game. And using ideas like that and language like that can encourage people to do something that a lot of people who look at this card would think that no one would ever do, and that's pay mana to help their opponents. I think that you'd be surprised, as long as you're playing this against decks and you play it at the right time, right? Because you need to look at everyone else's mana sources. Are they tapped out? Are they holding mana up for something else? You need to determine, are people willing to put into this? And then you have that second layer of how much do I want to put in as the caster of this spell? Because if I put too much in, that may actually discourage other people from putting things in. They might think, oh, well, 5 lands is enough, or I don't even have 5 basics in my whole deck. But yeah, I mean, this, for the effect that this gives, this is a very aggressively costed card, and that's what I love about Group Hug in Politics, Mike.
Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things where you said, like, when you're playing a card like this, it is Group Hug, but you have to have the conversation. You have to talk. More times than not, when you're playing Group Hug, you're also playing Politics at the same time. Because if you just give everybody everything all the time, it gets to an arms race point where it can be super battle cruisery, and those are cool games as well. But sometimes you got to say, hey, I'm offering you resources, so what are we going to do about this? Right. Hey, I have a spell I can cast, and we can all get a benefit here, but I'm not going to just go in on my own. You know, you have to, yes, you absolutely have to kind of get a read of the room.
And the fact of the matter is that we've talked about this technique before. You are always allowed to reveal cards from a hidden zone, such as your hand, that you have access to. Not from your library, but from your hand.
Right.
And you would always have the option of, hey, I would like to ramp us out, but to cast this, I'm going to need to see that everybody wants to take part in it. And you can do that just by revealing the card from your hand. You don't have to put this on the stack and then start, asking for handouts like it's a fundraiser. You can strategically plan to cast this card in such a way that you're not going to get hosed no matter what happens.
Right. And the other thing to consider here is, as a reference for kind of what we're going to be talking about for the rest of this episode, are we saying that Veteran Explorer or Collective Voyage are more powerful than Sol Ring?
Debatable.
Sometimes, but
now they're
not
green.
Always. Yeah, they're not a 1-to-1 replacement every time, but we're gonna try and lean that way as much as possible.
I think you'll be surprised. That's what our goal for this episode is. If you just take the plunge and make these 1-for-1 replacements, you don't have to permanent, like, I solemnly swear I will replace all of my Sol Rings with Veteran Explorers.
Right.
No, just try it out, do some homework, as CMDR Central would say, and try out this swap. And for the most part, we have tried to make most of the cards we're recommending today a easy 1-for-1 swap, such that you can try this alternate way of playing. Maybe you're a player who likes to listen to us but doesn't really understand why you might play political or group hug cards. This is a way to try to dip your toe in the pool.
Yeah, it's not a mandate. It's a recommendation. And we hope that you follow through on it. Let's go to something a little bit more mean. I want to talk about Wrath of God. Because it is an iconic card. You're talking about over 30,000, close to, heck, we're at 33,000 decks for a $4 card that says 2 mana, white, sorcery, destroy all creatures that can't be regenerated. It is, I don't know, Alex, are there any cards that have like a better overall value on that kind of, it's
there
iconic for a reason.
There are board wipes
Sure.
that can achieve greater value than that, but they're not always going to achieve greater value than that, and they depend on the board state. So, for example, a card like Blasphemous Act, sure, it's 8 in a red, but you expect that when you're casting it, you're hoping that you'll get it down to as low as possible, hopefully only for a single red.
Sure.
And Hour of Revelation, I believe it is, from Amonkhet or the following set, is a card that costs triple white and 3, I believe, but you can get it down to triple white. There are other board wipes that can get you better value than Wrath of God.
Yeah,
Wrath
Toxic
of God is
Deluge is 3 mana, but you have to pay life to do it, and it gets around indestructible effects. There's a bunch of them, but Wrath of God is, I mean, it's out there. It's been printed a bunch of times. People use it, and it works, But we could make it more fun, right?
Oh,
we can make board wipes more fun.
Absolutely.
Alex, what? Give me a board wipe that's more fun.
Okay. So I have 2 board wipes that I would recommend swapping with Wrath of God, or maybe really any other board wipe. Wrath of God is just our quintessential stand-in here. Let's start with one of my favorite board wipes, Winds of Abandon.
Yeah.
Winds of Abandon is a sorcery for 1 and a white, that's 2 mana, that says exile target creature you don't control. For each creature exiled this way, its controller searches their library for a basic land card. Those players put those cards onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle, and it has overload for 4 white, which would turn this from a targeted removal to a board wipe removal for 6 mana. Now, this is very similar to what red removal spell, Mike?
Oh man, see, when we were talking about exile target creature you don't control, but you can overload it to each, I was thinking more like Cyclonic Rift.
Well, I was thinking about the more on the 1 mana white card side, the staple spot removal.
Oh, sorry, Path to Exile.
Yeah, this is quite similar to Path to Exile, right? But it also has that mode that reminds you of Cyc Rift. It's kind of a cross between Path to Exile and Cyclonic Rift, and the thing that I love about it is that it's a board wipe that doesn't really slow the game down, right?
No.
Because you're generating a ton of value for your opponents. However, whatever they were currently working on is done. They're going to bring out new threats with the new mana that you gave them. That's what you want when you're running this card. But what's very nice here is you don't have to do that. You can do the spot removal version, and you're only paying 1 mana more than you would for Path to Exile.
Yeah. It's a good card in that this, I mean, Winds of Abandon can be a finisher for you.
Yes, it can win you the game.
White.
Yeah.
But it can also be, like you said, it's a flexible card. It can be a, slightly slower and 1 more mana than a Path to Exile. But, heck, if there's 4 threats out there, if there's 3 threats out there and you just need them to go away, that's also totally reasonable. Mm-hmm. It's a good card. It's a very good card. But
I have another one.
You know what? What if I'm sitting here going, that's still, I mean, that's cool. It's I have more fun with
that's
that.
That's kid stuff. I want people to be afraid of me.
I want it to be silly. Yeah. I want fun. I want to interact. Right. What's another one that I could deal with?
The second board wipe I wanted to talk about is Coercive Portal, which is perhaps the second greatest colorless board wipe after All Is Dust. Coercive Portal is a 4 mana artifact with Will of the Consul. At the beginning of your upkeep, starting with you, each player votes for Carnage or Homage. If Carnage gets more votes, sacrifice Coercive Portal and destroy all non-land permanents. If Homage gets more votes or the vote is tied, draw a card.
It's such a fun card.
It's very fun. This is
I love
so
voting
cool.
cards.
Yeah, voting is the best.
But first of all, voting for Carnage or Homage, that's fun. Second of all, sacrifice it and destroy all non-land permanents. The idea of giving everybody the opportunity to bargain or to debate or to vote outright for, we need a reset or not is great. Because the only time that this is really going to hurt you is if you're in the best board state. But if you're in the best board state,
I'm probably not playing this.
You're it's very unlikely that you're playing Coercive Portal, keeping it around because there's no reason to board wipe. And then by the time that it ever gets to a board wipe, it's because you've accrued enough power. Like, you know what's in your hand. You know how to plan things out. You have information that the rest of the table doesn't have. So Coercive Portal is one of those things that I love when this is, even if it lasts towards the end of the game and it's me and one other person, and I'll just, all right, vote is tied, I'll draw a card. Vote is tied, I'll draw a card. Like, if that's the downside of this card for the most part,
yeah,
it's a cool card.
Yeah, this is a very interesting card. Now, it's definitely crept up there because it's only had a single printing in the original Conspiracy. Mm-hmm. It's gotten up to about $11. But, hopefully they get us a reprint on this card because voting effects are so fun.
It seems like this is one of those cards that I was kind of bummed out when, Commander Legends, it didn't come out. Mm-hmm. Because this was a card that would have loved to go into the Silver Quill Commander.
Oh, for sure.
But it is good. And here's the thing. I absolutely agree. We're talking about $11 versus Wrath of God. It's $4, right?
Yeah.
But this is also a card that can go into just about any deck. It is a colorless artifact. And it's only in 1,600 decks.
Yeah.
Which is surprising because it's so good. I guess people really like Control. But I get it.
Just delightful.
So those are a couple of different types of board wipes. Alex, why don't you give me the next card that we're going to look into swapping out a bit?
Sure, Mike. Draw spells are very important in this game.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that people just in general are drawn to the most powerful ones. For example, like Blue Sun Zenith. Mm-hmm. Very ubiquitous draw spell. X triple blue. For an instant, target player draws X cards and then shuffle Blue Sun Zenith into its owner's library. Mm-hmm. This is, it's great. And then we have some quite similar effects in what do we have? Stroke of Genius, which is same thing. It's an instant for X2 and blue, and you'll draw X cards, but it doesn't shuffle back in. Now, both quite popular cards, but I think that we can find a more fun way to spend that mana. The first option is the next card in the set that Collective Voyage was in, and that's Mind's Aglow, which is for a single blue mana. It's a sorcery with joined forces. Starting with you, each player may pay any amount of mana, and then each player draws X cards, where X is the total amount of mana paid this way. This is a really fun card.
If we talked about how much fun Collective Voyage is, because ramping is cool and giving everybody the opportunity to ramp is cool. I am in the minority where I think ramping is more fun than drawing cards. Most people really
I don't know if you're in the minority. I love ramping. I don't include enough card draw. I always have enough ramp. Often
That's
too
fair.
much ramp.
I'm sorry. You know what? Fair point. I am sorry if I projected onto anybody there. I love Mind's Aglow because it is, how many cards do we want to draw? Table. And that's always fun for me because it is literally hey, I'm the one who's putting myself at a disadvantage here because I'm going to pay this mana and you're all going to untap before.
And you're going to be a card down.
Yeah. So if we're talking about how much fun this can be, let's go for it.
Yeah,
and
the interesting thing about this one is that unlike Collective Voyage, where when you hit, say, 5 or 6 combined mana from the table, people might be more reticent to contribute more because they're like, okay, well, either I don't have more than 5 or 6 basics remaining in my deck, or I don't need more than 5 or 6 lands to win the game right now.
Diminishing returns.
Right. However, with Mind's Aglow, has anyone ever looked at a card draw spell and said, 5's enough? No, they want to draw 50 cards. Everyone wants to draw all the cards all the time.
Battle Cruiser.
No one's going to look at the pile and say, oh, well, 4? I don't need any more than 4 cards. Are you kidding me?
It's so good, and it's another one where you get everybody involved. And you know what? Say you're looking at the table and everybody's tapped out except for you. Well, then here's another option. How about Prosperity? So 1 blue and X for a sorcery that says each player draws X cards. That's it.
Oh, yeah.
It's real simple. It's Mind's Aglow, except for you're the only participant. Everybody draw this many cards.
This one is a little bit closer to Blue Sun Zenith in effect.
Yeah.
You're getting... We talked about this before. Due to the cost, in scare quotes, of more cards being drawn, just for other people, not just for you, instead of paying triple blue and X, you're paying single blue and X at sorcery speed. And even though it seems like, oh, well, you're only saving 2 mana, think about how that actually translates to the actual use cases. Let's say that you want to draw 4 cards, okay, with Blue Sun Zenith. That's going to be triple blue and X is 4. So that's 7 mana to draw 4 cards. And it's a little bit, I mean, that's not terrible, but that's quite the price. But with Prosperity, if you want to draw 4 cards, that's 5 mana. I feel a lot better about that one. And also, the rest of the table is also drawing 4 cards.
Sometimes you need everybody to dig for an answer. Sometimes
we talk about that all the time. Sometimes it's time for people to dig.
There's nothing wrong. If you're in a competitive format, I don't want to give any of my opponents answers. Okay, fine. But if you just want to get the most value, sometimes it's giving it away too.
Speaking of giving,
it's not card advantage.
Value away. We have another option that is almost the exact same card, but you have an additional modal option put on for a little bit of extra cost. Fascination.
This is one that I was really surprised because when we're talking about, Prosperity is in 4,000 decks, Mind's Aglow is in just over 4,200. This card isn't even in 2,000 decks, and it's less than a quarter, and it is really good.
Yeah, really understand, other than the, I would say the standard answer of people see each player and they, curl up into the fetal position until it goes away. But Fascination is X double blue for sorcery modal spell. Choose one. Each player draws X cards, or each player mills X cards. Now, just the fact that you have each player mills X cards on there as an option immediately turns this from just a group hug draw spell to also now it's a win con.
Yep.
Even if you're not in a mill deck, which, by the way, if you're in a mill deck, you should be playing this. And basically, no mill decks are.
How this is anymore.
Yeah,
how is this
it's
not
in
more mill decks?
10% of mill decks. It's disgusting. Very, very usable win con. We know that in a group hug battlecruiser style deck, by the end of the game, by turn 9, 10, 11, 12, we're generating so much mana because we're giving so much value away. We're building up such an impregnable, huge, monumental board state. What are we going to do with all of this mana? Well, one of the options is to use an effect that you would normally spend a little bit of mana on. How about X equals 30? And now everyone mills 30 cards, or everyone mills 50 cards. Okay, now milling isn't going to cause you to win on the spot. For that, you'll have to wait until their upkeep. So, pass the turn, okay, you draw and lose instantly. Next player's turn, you'll draw and lose. Next player's turn, they draw and lose. And just like that, you won.
It's not quite at, ooh, can I see that?
It's close.
It's really close.
It's an uncommon from Fate Reforged.
You can buy it for $0.25.
Oh, yeah. This card costs nothing.
Everybody pay more attention.
Group Hug and mill decks alike should love this card.
It's our job to talk about these kind of cards that fall under the wayside because they are symmetrical or they are group huggy, which means less value and advantage, except for it usually means more value because you're the one who knows what's going on. Let's go on to another one here. You know what? It's been too long since we talked about Ramp. I'm getting itchy already. Let's talk about two of the biggest staples in Green Ramp. Kadama's Reach and Cultivate. These are both two generic and a green for effects that say search your library for two basics, put one onto the battlefield tapped and the other one into your hand. Sorcery, speed. You're talking about 106,000 for Kadama's Reach and 140,000 plus.
Staple doesn't even begin to describe it. These cards are monsters.
Monsters.
In the 3-mana ramp slot.
Great value. Get a land onto the battlefield. Have your next land drop for sure. Totally fine. I'm bored with it. I don't want to do it anymore.
What if we can make it more fun at the same mana cost, Mike? How would you feel about that?
Oh, so much. I love it, Alex. And this is a card that you and I got to discover recently.
Yeah, shout out to Leo at Game Night who showed us perhaps the only group hug card left that I haven't heard of. Clear the Land. 2 and a green for a sorcery. Each player reveals the top 5 cards of their library, puts all land cards revealed this way onto the battlefield tapped, and exiles the rest.
Now, why do we love this card, Alex?
Well, because everyone's going to ramp a bunch of lands.
Number one.
And I don't know, Mike, what's the other reason?
Oh, there's a couple.
Okay.
Next reason. This is a 40-cent card.
Oh, sure.
Super cool. This is in 152 decks.
No one has ever, if we haven't heard of it, and we're, the Group Hug fanatics, how the hell is anyone else ever going to ever heard of it?
It's in 152!
Yeah. This is our Ooh, Can I See That segment. Clear the Land is in 152 green decks, which is 0% of green decks.
It's so fun, too, because I love the idea of, hey, we're all going to ramp. Hopefully, maybe, I don't know. Hope we get lucky. I love the idea of, even me playing this, I love the idea of, oh, well, I whiffed. What did everybody else get?
Yeah.
Because that's fun for me. That's almost like the chaos warp effect, or the like, hey, we're gonna flip into something and hope for the best. What do we got, everybody?
Can't even describe the joy of seeing a card that is so clearly a group hug card, that is so viable as a group hug card, and I've never once laid eyes upon it before.
Yeah. This was serendipity, because I was visiting St. Louis, our mutual area, and managed to get a couple of games in with you. And this card was played by neither of us, and we both just kind of stared at it in awe for a while.
What is that?
We had a literal "ooh, can I see that" moment.
Yeah, that's the best part of the game is can I see that?
And so it's a very cool card, and definitely something worth
60 cents.
Exploring.
Printed in, it's a rare from Mercadian Masks, 60 cents.
Yep. Let's get that up. Let's get that up to $1. Come on, everybody.
Oh boy.
All right, Alex. I talked about some ramp spells. I've scratched my itch for a little bit. What do you got for me next,
Mike? What's the so powerful, so controversial? You see it all the time in CDH. We're talking about tutors. Tutors are a very contentious part of the game because they make a deck more consistent, more powerful.
Yep.
You're going to find your combo pieces and win faster. What if we could make tutors more fun for the table in just the best ways? Now, the first one, I mean, let's start by talking about what we're comparing to, and that's the big boys, Vampire Tutor, which is a single black for an instant. It's the big mama. Search your library for a card, then shuffle your library and put that card on top of it. You lose 2 life. This card is banned in Legacy and restricted in Vintage. For good reason. It's arguably the single most powerful tutor in the entire game. But believe it or not, this $45 card has a very easy swap that makes it way more fun. Mike, tell me about the card that we just talked about like last episode.
Yeah, I hate to repeat it, except for I don't, because it's awesome. Scheming Symmetry. Yes. Everybody, Scheming Symmetry. Scheming Symmetry. 1 black for a sorcery. Choose 2 target players. Each of them searches their library for a card, shuffles their library, puts that card on top.
Best.
Awesome, simple, great.
We don't want to, hit it too much because we just talked about it, but suffice to say, any deck that you're running a Vampire Tutor in that isn't also a CEDH deck, I would just swap that out like this every single day of the week, Mike.
Yeah.
Imperial Seal as well if you're very wealthy.
Good lord.
Scheming Symmetry, just such an easy and fun swap, but that's not the only option. And it's not even the only option in black. We actually have a second card in black that I would love to talk about. Wishclaw Talisman, which, some people have found themselves enjoying because, they're trying to cheat it and get it so only they can use it. I don't want to use it like that. I want to use it in the way where we're allowing other people to use the Wish. Wishclaw Talisman for 1 and a black. It's an artifact that says Wishclaw Talisman enters the battlefield with 3 wish counters on it. And then you can pay 1, tap, and remove a wish counter from Wishclaw Talisman. Search your library for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle. An opponent gains control of Wishclaw Talisman. Activate this ability only during your turn.
I would like to give you the opportunity to tutor. Hey, you want to give it back to me?
Oh, there you go.
It's a very fun card because, you get to have that, okay, let's talk about this way. It comes with counters, so if you want to proliferate, go nuts.
It's also an artifact, so it's easier to recur.
Yep. It is cool to be able to make deals with, hey, I will let you go find whatever you want. Don't beat me over the head with it. And after you're done finding it, how about you send it back over this way? What you think?
Yeah, I think the flavor of this is, in my opinion, pretty clearly meant to be the Monkey's Paw, which I can't imagine anyone's never heard of that legend. But the Monkey's Paw is basically the physical artifact embodiment of the genies of old. Not the, Robin Williams Aladdin genie where he's happy to serve you and sing lots of songs. The kind of genie where they will grant your wish with an ironic twist. The ironic twist in this case being that your enemy gains control of the power. But for us, I think that's actually quite the upside.
Yeah. There's no downside to it. It's more fun.
That's group hug for us, right? The downside is really an upside.
Exactly. And I mean, we're talking about a $2 card. Like, hey, I want to wait a tutor, but I don't want to spend $45 on Vampiric. All right. This is a lot cheaper and recurable, and you can actually make some allies with it. Have fun, kids.
So fun.
I like that. But, and we have to also give a nod to another card we talked about pretty recently here. Noble Benefactor.
Love it.
Even less decks. We're talking about less than 1,000 decks a quarter for a card that it's a death trigger everybody tutor. 2 generic and a blue for a 2/2 cleric. If Noble Benefactor is put in the graveyard, each player may search their library for 1 card, put that card into your hand. Even better. Then you shuffle. So it's not even tutoring on top. Yep. Just tutoring in hand. Such a cool card. Absolutely has to go in here.
The interesting thing about it is because this tutor has no restrictions on what type or character of a card that you're searching for, and because this card is so old, it doesn't have the requirement that you reveal the card that you searched for, which in blue is extremely unusual.
Mm-hmm. There's no exactly. There's no requirement for it to be a card type. There's no requirement for you to reveal it. You put it out there and you say, "Hey, everybody, if somebody kills this," it like very much like the Veteran Explorer. Hey, when this goes away, we're all gonna have some fun. Who wants to have fun?
I love the art on this by D. Terlizzi, which basically depicts, I guess, a nobleman who is just this very jovial-looking elderly man who's gingerly proffering a corn purse, like, all right, now go down to the corner store and get yourself something nice, because that's exactly how I feel when I'm playing this card.
I dig it. See, I like this card because this cleric is the Noble Benefactor, but I also feel like I'm the Noble Benefactor.
Really, you're the Noble Benefactor. It's like, all right, now, everyone go find your best card in your deck, or
have a good time.
Not, or just find the land you're missing, either one.
All right, Alex. You know what? I miss talking about Ramp. I want to talk about Ramp some more.
And again, you are just insatiable.
Yeah. Well, listen. I said I liked it more than drawing cards. Now I got to really drive that point home. So let's talk about the 4 mana ramp spells.
There's not too many people who are willing to run 4 mana ramp anymore.
Yeah. But those that are, I mean, we're talking about Explosive Vegetation and Migration Path.
Which I was surprised.
28,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, 28,000 and 16,000.
I think that myself, and I'm not alone in this, that being someone who consumes Commander content and tries to avail myself of the current sort of global meta of EDH, if that could even be said to be a thing, that the game is kind of in speeding up, and that even really cards like Kodama's Reach and Cultivate have been falling away because people have started to prefer 2 mana ramp. So it astounds me that sorcery speed 4 mana ramp is phenomenally popular, because as we know, EDH Rec no longer categorizes and archives decks that are older than 2 years old. So these are not 28,000 decks from the Stone Age of EDH where nobody knew what they were doing. These are new decks that are still running 4 mana ramp. So for those people, Mike, tell them what we got.
Yeah, so, I mean, they both basically read the same thing. Search your library for 2 basic land cards, put them on the battlefield tap, then shuffle your library. Migration Path also has cycling too. So
they're just better.
Which is just strictly better. It's not in as many decks. I'm going to lean that more towards it's much newer. Yeah. It hasn't been reprinted, Explosive Vegetation amount of times. But it's 4 mana to get 2 basic lands.
Right.
And that's okay. I guess that's the going rate for most things. When you're not doing Veteran Explorer kind of nonsense. But can we talk about a card that is just, as far as I'm concerned, strictly better, and then the reasons why people won't use it as much? Alex, go through Tempt with Discovery.
Oh, I would be overjoyed to. Tempt with Discovery.
Yeah.
300 credits of sorcery within the tempting offer cycle, one of my favorite cycles in the whole game. Search your library for a land card and put it onto the battlefield. Each opponent may search their library for a land card and put it onto the battlefield. For each opponent who searches their library this way, search your library for a land card and put it onto the battlefield. Then each player who searches their library this way shuffles. Mike, I think that almost everyone knows about this card, but just as many people have been put off of it by other content creators who feel that the possibility that your opponents, oh my gosh, would generate value and get a land out of their deck, well, that means we can't be running this. And if your opponent runs this, Mike, then you have to go get your wasteland because you don't want them to get any value. I feel the opposite. I think this is better than any other 4-mana ramp you could be running in green at sorcery speed.
Yeah, because let's go through the everything about it. Any land comes in untapped.
Oh, yeah.
For 4 mana, with the upside of potentially getting more.
You'll get more.
Here's the thing. I totally understand the no, you don't do that because you know what? If you do that and they get 3 lands of whatever they want for 4 mana, that can be game breaking. Okay, fine. If that's where it comes from, that's totally fine. The idea of me not running this because other people are all going to go get their wasteland or something along those lines. I don't
screw
know.
That.
I think you have to be in pretty competitive circumstances to be worried about that.
I think if you've done that, because that's the Achilles heel of group hug, is if every other player at the table is absolutely refusing to engage with your political play and your group hug play, and they say, no, forget about that guy, let's all gang up on him together. At that point, your group hug strategy has failed. And it's not the fault of Tempt with Discovery. Something else has gone wrong, and it's probably that you're playing at the wrong table, or you're not really pitching them this social group hug way of playing in a way that they're receptive to. So really the problem is with you, not with Tempt with Discovery, which is a perfect, just beautiful, perfect card in every way.
See, for me, it's much more of the worst case scenario that I should expect with this is it's a 4 mana, go find any land in my deck, put it onto the battlefield untapped. There's not a whole lot of rates that are better than that for those kind of effects. There's a bunch of tutor any land and put it into your hand. There's a couple that are, hey, go get this land, it comes in tapped. But heck, would you pay 4 mana for go get Gaia's Cradle? Yeah, absolutely you would. There are 4 mana for go get Glacial Chasm. Absolutely.
Gaia's Cradle untapped, by the way. You can immediately refund the mana.
I love Tempt with Discovery. It is $1. Go get Tempt with Discovery.
I would run this over Explosive Edge any day of the week.
I run it over most of these ramp spells, and that's coming from the guy who I just want to ramp all the time. Okay. I think I'm good. I think I'm off of ramp for the time being. So, Alex, why don't you take us in a different direction here? I got to fan myself.
Now, I think that it almost goes without saying that if I say the command zone or Josh Lequai, someone in the crowd is going to shout, Vidalcan Orrery! Vidalcan Orrery is the pet card of Josh Lequai, which is totally fine. We all have pet cards. However, we have other options. Vidalcan Orrery is a 4-mana artifact that says you may cast spells as though they had flash, which means effectively at instant speed.
15,000 decks.
Now, Mike and I have, and there's also what's the blue one? Ley Line of Anticipation.
Yes,
which is the same effect but for 2 and double blue. Now, Mike and I have talked about this. Mike feels that these effects are extremely powerful and should be in every deck. I'm not as certain on that one. However,
you're putting a little bit of words into my mouth there. I'm saying that Vidalcan Orrery is one of those cards that in the right deck is absolutely.
I think you've walked your position back a little bit, Mike, but that's neither here nor there.
We're gonna have to check with this.
Let's check the archives. But there are other options. We don't have to run that because we have cards like Tidal Barracuda. Just 3 and a blue for a creature fish. It's a 3/4. Any player may cast spells as though they had flash, but your opponents can't cast spells during your turn.
Great.
I just think that's better.
It's strictly better. I mean, it is easier to remove.
It's group hug strictly better.
But here's the thing. I love the idea of giving everybody flash speed except for my turn. Because you're giving everybody a benefit, but you have a higher benefit. Mm-hmm. This isn't even... A lot of the problem with group hug is giving your opponents value and not getting anything better for it. You're getting the same returns.
Yeah,
and
which means you go
costs
negative.
You more.
Yeah.
Right. But Tidal Barracuda is strictly everybody gets value and you get more.
Yeah, you have this very grand abolisher style effect that prevents people from interacting with your board on your turn. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, people are basically just going to be sitting there refactoring their strategy now that every deck is an interaction deck. You can play a response to any spell with any other spell. Sorceries, creatures, artifacts, anything.
Yep. It's just strictly good.
Strictly good. It's not the only option, though. We have another option, Mike.
Yeah, and this is one that I've always liked. I'm gonna be honest, everybody. It's 40 episodes in. First of all, thanks for listening. Second of all, I don't know if we've discussed this on an Ooh, Can I See That? So maybe this is getting double duty. If it is, wah, because it's worth mentioning again. Vernal Equinox. This is a card. This is an enchantment that is in a total of 469 decks.
Wow.
3 generic and a green. Any player may play creature and enchantment spells anytime they could play an instant.
As though they
just have flash speed. Yeah, it's just flash speed on creatures and enchantments. That's awesome. Everybody, here you go. You have a specific type of Vidalcan Orrery. Throw them out there. It's not Allurin busted to combo off with by itself. It is this really, really simple, really, really underplayed card, and it costs $1.
And it has art by Rebecca Gay.
Yeah.
Which is probably why the foil is $42.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. Well, if you're going to pick this up, let's talk about getting
the price is $1 for the normal card.
Yeah. I like this card a lot because in the same way where it's, hey, I'm going to give everybody a benefit, but I'm probably not playing this in my Spellslinger deck. You know, like this is in my creatures and enchantments deck.
Like many of the cards we talk about, by including the card in your deck, you are already, in a way, breaking parity on the symmetric effect by preparing your deck for that effect. You are running more creature cards and more enchantment cards in your deck than you would expect your average opponent to be playing.
Mm-hmm. I love it. It is a pet card, and it is one of those ones that you said earlier, and I think you're right. One of the best things you can do in Magic, the best thing, is when somebody plays a card and you're like, wait, ooh, can I see that? Like, that's really
makes
fun,
me feel warm
right?
and fuzzy inside.
It does.
Yeah.
I think the only one that makes me happier is when I do it. And somebody says, wait, what's that do? And then they get excited.
It's a vanishingly rare event at this point. The downside of knowing about so many cards.
Yeah. But hey, we got that one. We had it with Clear the Land. We're gonna ride that high for like I'm gonna ride that high for probably a year. That made me really happy. Okay, let's move away from the flash speed stuff.
Sure.
Sometimes you need to get rid of an enchantment or an artifact, right? Mm-hmm. They're problematic cards, you know. Maybe somebody is really, really mean and they decide to get rid of your Vernal Equinox or something. Or maybe you're in the best board state and somebody else played a coercive portal because they're cool people and they like playing cool cards. Well, that means you want to use a Rec Sage, right? You know, it's in 64,000 decks, 2 generic and a green for a 2/1 Elf Shaman. When it enters the battlefield, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. People play it all the time,
yeah,
right?
Very popular, yeah.
Now, we're going to talk about a card that there is no argument. It is strictly better, it is pricier, and it is new. So I totally get that this is not a one-to-one change. However, I want us to talk about this card for 2 reasons. One, because it's awesome and I love it. And then we'll get to the second part here because I think it's a thought experiment. Alex, tell me about Druid of Purification.
Druid of Purification is a creature human druid 2/3 for 3 and a green, 4 mana. When Druid of Purification enters the battlefield, starting with you, each player may choose an artifact or enchantment you don't control. Destroy each permanent chosen this way.
So good.
Oh my gosh. Green just gets the most delicious cards. They get everything.
It's a 4 mana 2/3 that destroys 4 things.
Holy moly.
Now, here's what I will say. It'll destroy 2 things, right? No, you don't control. At worst, this destroys 1 thing, because every player can just choose the same thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so worst case scenario, it's a Rec Sage. Best case scenario, it's a Rec Sage times 4 for 1 more mana.
Right.
That's so cool. I love this card. It's in 464 decks, but it's been out for weeks. We're not talking years or anything. But the reason I wanted to bring this up is because this is just a strictly better Rec Sage. So does this card climb in price as it becomes more and more prominent that, hey, this is just a ridiculously
you need to be really careful
card?
with strictly better because that it is hyperbole. There is a very clear and defined difference between a 3 CMC card and a 4 CMC card. Even though this effect is worth way more than 4 mana, it still costs more. So it's not an easy 1-for-1 swap. When you swap, your deck's curve will increase.
Letter of the law, you're right. It is not strictly better. It is
vastly better.
Vastly better. Yes. Okay. It is better in all but the... it's just good. It's just good.
It's just good.
So here's my concern. Is this a card... It's already at $7.
Oh, yeah.
Is this a card that's just going to climb in price?
Not necessarily. It's brand new. It just came out in AFC.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this card will remain a staple, or it's not a staple right now, but I think this card will remain a standby for decks as long as people are cognizant of it existing.
Sure.
Any green deck will take this. What a just magnificent creature, especially in the 4 mana slot, removing 4 things, and none of those things can be the things that you control.
Right.
Yeah.
You will strictly do okay. Love it. All right, Alex, why don't you take us to another card?
Okay, so we talked about board wipes in white.
Yes.
But red also has board wipes. We mentioned Blasphemous Act, but there's also other popular red board wipes like Chain Reaction for 2 red. It's a sorcery that says that Chain Reaction deals X damage to each creature, where X is the number of creatures on the battlefield, and all the cards like Chandra's Ignition. Things that just remove a ton of stuff from the board for not a lot of mana. Now, those are great.
Sure.
But what if you wanted your board wipes to be a lot sillier than that? Right?
Yes.
What if you wanted some really just kooky out there board wipes that definitely will wipe the board, but
You're
not
all my favorite
but
words.
not in the way that anyone would expect you to. I have 2 cards that I believe I've introduced Mike to both of them in the prep for this episode. First one, Bog Infestation from Stronghold, excuse me. For 3 red, it's a sorcery. Destroy all creatures target player controls. For each creature that died this way, that player creates 2 1/1 red goblin creature tokens. Now, this is awesome. Mostly because you can blow someone out and then say, okay, listen, your board is completely out of control. I can't have you have those creatures that you have. However, before somebody else gets in here with their board wipe and leaves you with nothing, what I'm going to do is give you a ton of goblins, and all I ask is that you not blow me out with them. But that's not the only way that you can use it. You can also blow up your own board and make a vast number of goblins. This card is old. It's from Stronghold. It's only
I just like the build up to old. That was awesome.
1,300 decks. 0% of red decks.
Yeah.
It seems to me patently clear that, my goblin token decks are quite popular.
Yeah.
Why is this not seeing more play?
Yeah, because in my head, this is a pretty good, do I want to make more goblins for myself in a goblin deck? And if so, great. Or it can be used in a number of different ways. If there's only one person that's the threat, okay, great. All of those crazy things.
They can't be too pissed. You just double the number of creatures on their board.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But it's selective.
Right.
Right? You could use this in a bunch of different ways. And I'm kind of surprised that it's not a little bit more prevalent. We typically try to aim around 1,000 or less. This is a little bit over that, 1,300, 1,400. But it's still in 0%. This is at least, ooh, can I see that?
Well, speaking
adjacent
of ooh, can I see that? Before we get too far into it, I do have a second one that's in the very same vein. Another card that I'm debuting, so my Descent of the Dragons for 4 red. It's a sorcery that says destroy any number of target creatures. For each creature destroyed this way, its controller creates a 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying.
So, 2 things about this. One, you absolutely did introduce me to this card as we were coming up with kind of some some of the staples that we wanted to play around with. And even after that, I still misread this card. I read Destroy All.
Oh no, you pick.
This is so cool! Destroy any number of target creatures.
You can leave the stuff that you want to leave. You can make deals to leave the stuff that your opponents want to leave. And say, listen, I am happy to leave your utility creature up, but all of these dragons I'm giving you, those go towards someone else.
It's... How this isn't a card that is in just about any token deck I can think of that's red, I don't understand.
Yeah, this is in 1,400 decks, 0% of red decks. It's a mythic from Dragons of Tarkir. So there is no way this flew under anyone's radar.
Yeah, they knew what they were making. They expected it. 1,400 decks. Yeah. All right, man. I like that too. I like the idea of, I'm going to blow this up, but don't worry, I'm going to give you something.
This isn't just a little something. These are 4/4 flyers.
Yeah.
They're basically angels.
This is Beast Within, but 4/4 red dragons. Right. Not exactly 1-to-1 by any means.
Yeah, when we pay 6 mana for a board wipe, we expect a lot of value out of it. And I think being able to pick any number of creatures that you want to remove.
So ridiculous.
And with that effect, you're creating this political atmosphere where basically you're just having your opponents stick a bunch of dragons on each other. Mike, this should be in pretty much every dragon deck, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, heck, even think of it this way. Part of the reason I'm surprised that this isn't in just about every token deck is because this can be I'm going to turn my tokens into 4/4 flying tokens.
Well, that's how I use it.
And I'm going to kill that problematic
Yeah.
creature.
If you're
Like,
in a
that
token
person-
deck,
So
most of
good.
your tokens are usually pretty low value, 1/1s, 2/2s maybe, or 0/1s. Upgrading all of those to big fat flyers, very, very effective. This is a game ender for some token decks.
I'm big fan. I thank you very much for bringing these.
Oh,
cards
of
to my
course.
attention so we can bring them to everybody else's attention. Let's talk about some more targeted removal.
Okay.
You know, we've talked about a bunch of board wipes. Even Descent of the Dragons is kind of board wipe / targeted in its own way. So, you know, the big one that's out there, yeah, we could talk about, you know, remove sword, or you know, Swords to Plowshares and Path to Exile. You know what? They're 1 mana really good removal spells. Keep them. That's fine.
Yep.
They both also give something cool. Love it. How about Anguished Unmaking? So,
And its ilk.
and its ilk.
I think
Yeah,
there's about
like
5
it.
or 6 other Orzhov spot removal spells that are
Yeah, the Anguished
more
Unmaking
or
ilk.
less the same thing. They all cost between 2 and 4 mana, and they all
Okay.
exile.
Right. And the, you know, what Anguished is the big one, I think, just because it's, you know, first of all, it's in
I think it was the biggest
39,000
one for the
decks.
longest amount of time.
Yeah. Okay, that's reasonable. Most iconic.
Plus, it's a
on
very this is the story moment of Soren's arc. This is Soren
Yeah.
destroying Avacyn, who has been corrupted by the Eldrazi.
Now I'm sad. But here we go. 1 generic white-black for an instant that says exile target non-land permanent. You lose 3 life. Instant speed. Exile something bad. Small downside of losing 3 life. No big deal. Right?
Yeah, I mean,
It's a really good card.
it's
Like-
pretty great.
It's strictly just a good card.
There's a reason that
right?
even with, it actually has only been reprinted once, but it was reprinted in the most spectacular fashion as a Secret Lair promo card in the style of a metal band.
Yeah.
Oh
I
god,
did like
it
that
looks
one.
super cool. But this card is that's the only reprint since Shadows over Innistrad.
And I mean, it's in a bunch of decks. It's, you know, but you know what? For as good as it is, as it only having the 1 reprint, $7. It's not bad. It's higher than I'd like for most of my cards.
Right.
But okay, I get it. I guess.
But what are the alternatives?
Yeah, that's where we get into the fun. Why don't you tell me about the first one, and I'll
Okay.
do the second one.
So this is one of my pet cards, and I think that actually quite a lot of people know about this one already, but it's the amount of play it sees is quite small for the color that it's in and the value that it has. Council's Judgment for 1 white, 3 mana for a sorcery. Will of the Council. That's the best way for a card to start. Starting with you, each player votes for a non-land permanent you don't control. Exile each permanent with the most votes or tied for the most votes. It's only had 2 reprints. And Mike, I think this isn't the most efficient spot removal in the game, but this is the most untouchable spot removal in the game. This is very important because
It's very interesting.
not only is it exile, which is when we're talking about this kind of spot removal, that makes a difference, but it's exile removal that does not target the thing that it's removing for 3 mana.
Yes. You're just voting. So there's not a hexproof, there's not a shroud.
Yeah.
It's just, hey, no, that thing's gonna go away. And this is again where I do my game theory segment. If you play this card, I strongly recommend that you pick the person that is 3rd in turn order, starting with you. It's my recommendation just about every single time.
Well, what do you mean? Because you have to vote first.
Right. So you start with yourself. I'm going to choose the person who's going to pick 3rd. So not the person next to me, but the person next to them.
Oh, you choose one of their permanents.
I choose one of their permanents. Because then the second player is either going to pick something different, or they're going to pick that one. The third player is not going to pick their own card if the fourth player has the ability to pick something else. And the fourth player is going to pick whatever's going to be most benefit to them. So more times than not, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove 2 permanents. So I either pick the second worst permanent on the board, or I pick the person who is third in the voting order in a in a trip of 4. I guarantee you can get. It's so easy to remove 2 things, to exile 2 permanents with this card. You can talk about it. You can vote on it. If you deliberate too much, sometimes people are gonna catch wise and say, "No, we're just gonna get rid of this thing." But
well, the important thing is that even though this is a voting effect, just like with Druid of Reclamation, this can't come back to bite you. It is a non-land permanent that you don't control. I can't even tell you how many times I vote for a player's permanent, and then they try to turn around and vote for one of mine. I said, you should probably read the card again, because you can't do that.
Yeah. Well, you blow up my thing, I'm going to blow up your thing. No, you're not.
Yeah. Also, at the end of the day, it's very relevant to talk about this, that when you are removing things and wiping the board and doing control style effects, talked about this with some of our other cards, the crackback on that, the hate that you'll get, the attention you'll get, the aggro you get from the other players, it can definitely be attenuated by a voting effect, because the responsibility is shared. Even though you're the caster of the spell, everyone else made those decisions, and also you voted first, so your vote is the least recent in everyone's mind. And usually it's the third or the fourth player who is making the deciding vote, who is actually deciding what's getting removed. So really, at the end of you're kind of seeming a little blameless, even though you're quite a bit less than blameless in that removal.
Hey, I just wanted to get rid of that one thing that was a problem.
It's not my fault you voted suboptimally. Mike, tell me about
sometimes being group hug and political also means that you have to try and get the most value.
Tell me about another white removal spell that really doesn't see as much play as it probably should. How about Ablation?
Yeah, so here's the thing. When we talk about removal, there's a couple of different types, right? You can exile things, you can sacrifice things, you can kill things straight out, destroy things, put them in the graveyard. I love Oblation because we're talking about a 2 generic and a white for an instant. The owner of target non-land permanent shuffles it into their library, then draws 2 cards. It's so fun! So you have the Beast Within and the Generous Gift where you can destroy something and give them a beast or an elephant. Sure,
and then
whatever.
Swords to Plowshares and Path to Exile. Both.
Swords to Plowshares, all that stuff. I like Oblation because, hey, it's going back into your deck. Shuffle it, cool, draw 2 cards. If you get it back, good on you. That's awesome. I love that.
They probably won't.
Moment. They probably won't. And here's the thing. Are you going to get mad as the owner of something that is the priority one, needs to be removed item on the battlefield? If you get it removed, it goes back into your deck and you get 2 cards out of it?
Yeah.
Like, of all of the feel-bads that could happen, I feel like that's the best one. You know?
Yeah, this is quite an interesting removal effect. It's definitely worth mentioning that even though it does target Lycansel's Judgment, it does get past Indestructible and any other effect that would normally prevent that permanent from not being hit, except for protection from white,
right,
or protection from instants.
It gets around, death triggers. It gets around a bunch of.
Oh yeah, things. They don't get to recurred from the graveyard or anything like that.
And believe it or not, my favorite time that I've ever used this card is I had a big. I don't remember exactly what it was. I had a really big threat out there though, like big, scary, gonna hurt things creature. And somebody tried to steal it from me. Well, okay, so I'm going to draw 2 cards instead. Yeah.
It's quite similar to sacrificing something to avoid getting it hit.
It's a very cool
this card is
spell.
Dirt cheap.
It really is.
30 cents.
And here's the other part about this. Anguished Unmaking is in just under 40,000 decks and requires black and white to be in the deck to play it, right? Council's Judgment is in 5,000 decks. Oblation is in just under 7,000.
Right.
They cost somewhere between a quarter of the price and way less. And they're able to be in more decks. So it's just surprising to me that we don't see those cards more often.
Well, I mean, it's not that surprising because people are allergic to giving their opponents value.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. I keep living in my own control.
Yeah, we don't think
everybody likes fun.
Our listeners are of a different breed, right? We don't think the same way that other EDH players think. We see value on a card that is given to an opponent as value. That's part of the value of the card. Veteran Explorer isn't 1 mana ramp 2, it's 1 mana ramp 8. And 6 of that is for other players.
I dig it. All right, Alex. So, speaking of our listeners, we're going to get to something special for them very, very soon here. But, take me through one of the saltier cards.
Okay.
Like, I want to make one of the cards that just gets stuck in everybody's craw. Make it change into something more fun for me. What do you got?
Now, I think we're all familiar with Expropriate. This is the quintessential blue win con that isn't also a board wipe. For 7 blue, it's a sorcery with Consul's Dilemma. Honestly, this is probably the single most famous voting card in the game that I'm aware of. Consul's Dilemma, starting with you, each player votes for time or money. For each time vote, take an extra turn after this one. For each money vote, choose a permanent owned by the voter and gain control of it. Exile Expropriate. Mike, this card wins games. It just does. And the salty thing about it is that it's really easy for the other players at the table to kind of turn on each other and eat their own. Because people are very loss averse in general. Humans are. They don't want to lose things that they have. And it's really scary and unfun to have your best permanent stolen, which is what you imagine Expropriate will do. It's like, well, I don't want them to take my Critterhoof Behemoth. I don't want them to take my big artifact or my whatever I have on the board.
My Planner Portal. My
you're
Vidalcan Orrery.
You're afraid that's of losing what you have. So people make the wrong decision and they vote to give the other player an extra turn. Now, what are they going to do with an extra turn? Yeah, so here's the problem. As we all know, if a player takes 2 extra turns, they're almost guaranteed to win. And they're going to take 1 extra turn because they're not going to steal something from themselves. They're going to take an extra turn. So especially
when you're talking about somebody who's taking more than 1 extra turn after casting a 9-mana sorcery. Like, they're already in a pretty good position to be able to do things, and now they're going to do a lot.
So we all understand that Expropriate is very, very powerful. It makes people very, very salty. What can we run that isn't Expropriate that's around that kind of power level that's a little more fun? How about Walk the Eons?
Okay.
It's 4 blue for a sorcery. Target player takes an extra turn after this one. Very common. But it also has buyback. Sacrifice 3 islands. Now, we're getting this extra turn effect that Expropriate has. But instead of just getting a bunch of extra turns, people see the card, they're moaning and groaning, oh my god. We have... This is a modal effect. You can use this and buy it back to your hand and use it again at another turn. You can use this, buy it back, and cast it again if you have more than 6 mana to throw around and take 2 extra turns. But what you can also do because of the buyback is that you can donate extra turns to players, which is not a very common thing to do. I do it with my Group Hug Emrakul deck, but not too many people are on board with that. I think that in a certain kind of deck, that Walk the Eons is an include where you can be casting this multiple times.
I mean, I'll let you know this. Yeah. It's in my Damia Lands deck.
Yeah, I bet it is.
Because I there are several cards in there that are, hey, sacrifice lands, put lands onto the battlefield, draw a card, Gitrog is in there not because I want to combo off and do the CDH thing with Gitrog, but because I like drawing a card when I have to sacrifice a land because of random stuff that I have to do in my lands deck.
Yeah, if you're into lands deck with blue, this is pretty great.
It's really fun to, hey, you know what? You missed your land drop a couple of times, yeah? Hey, why don't you take another turn?
Right.
Don't worry, I'll get it back. I'll sacrifice 3 lands. And, just, hey, remember in the future. We're friends, right? We're cool?
Because there are a lot of effects in the game that are extra turn effects that say target player takes an extra turn, and you could, in theory, give those to other players, but you wouldn't necessarily want to do that because then you use it up, and without recursion, the spell's gone. But with buyback, the resource sort of balancement you're doing in your head is different now.
It's very fun to be able. It's almost fun as a standby to be able to manipulate the game flow to create a more fun game for everybody, right?
Yeah, and this is a big one. Giving away an extra turn really makes you feel like a god.
Without, hindering you to the point where you cannot do anything about it. It's, all right, I'm going to do this, and I guess it'll go away forever, which kind of stinks. No, you can get this back. A lot of the extra turn spells where target player takes an extra turn,
they exile themselves.
You exile them. Yeah, so you don't have that opportunity unless you're copying it or unless you're doing something crazy with it right at that moment. Buyback on an extra turn spell, sacrificing 3 islands is a lot. Let's be real.
Yeah.
But this is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very unique extra turn effect.
Also, it's $1.50, so
one of the cheapest ones.
That's pretty solid. Alex, thank you very much for helping me go through some of these staples of cards that I'm like, man, this is a good card. I acknowledge it, but what could be more fun?
Of course, Mike, it's always a pleasure.
I like changing up the ambiguity. You know what I mean?
Where can our listeners go if they want to try out some of these replacement cards?
Oh man, there's so many places, but
there's two,
the one that I'd recommend. Well, I was going to say the one that I'd recommend is if you wanted to pick up any of these cards, whether we're talking about the staples or our replacement staples, you should go to bit.ly/EDH_social. We'll put a link in the show notes. There is our affiliate link with TCG Player. You can buy all the cards we talked about, deck boxes, sleeves, etc. You support us, and it doesn't cost you anything to buy the cards that you're already going to buy. We appreciate it. Well, go ahead, Alex.
I'm sorry?
You said there are 2 places. I want to know what the other one was.
Well, it's Card Kingdom.
Oh, that's true. Well,
we're not an affiliate.
We got to get an affiliate with them. Hey, do me a favor. Go to Card Kingdom later after we figure that out. But in the meantime, use our affiliate link. Or, at the same time, it's been kind of a rough year and a half or so. Go support your local game shop if you can, and everybody's doing all of the responsible behavior, please. With that said, Alex, where can people find you on social?
Sure, you can find me on Twitter at Lappermedic. LAPPERMEDIC, or you can email me at alex@edhrec.com.
Everybody, we have a Discord link in our show notes, as it has gotten pretty interesting, talking about a bunch of different cards, a bunch of different effects. Alex, I think, has to spend... I think you enjoy doing it, but you do spend a good amount of time answering some judge questions.
Sure, I mean, I subject myself to it, and that's not the only server where I do that.
Sure.
But this currently is the only server where I'm the only judge in the server, and I can't just pass it off to other people.
It's so great. I'll be happy to edit the podcast as long as I never have to ask any question that I can't just in turn ask you to answer for me. Speaking of our Discord server and all of the different places where people can contact us via our email at thesocialcontractedh@gmail.com or following us on Twitter at EDH_social. Today's the day where we're going to do something a little bit special for our listeners, especially the ones that have provided kind of some material for us. So I have my good wheel spinner.
Oh my gosh.
So I have taken all of the different requests, whether it was from Twitter, whether it was from our email, whether it was from our Discord, taken all of them, combined them all, and type them all out in here. And we are at
Mike,
a
tell
total
them,
of 35.
tell them what we're doing here, right? Don't just...
Yeah. We're at a total of 35 different entries that are building a deck live next week. And it is with the idea of you picking the commander and us giving it the social contract kind of
spin
twist on it, you know? And in my head, I totally understood that this is one going to be like make a Feldegriff deck. You know, like,
boo.
Okay. Well, first of all, we don't boo the beautiful.
Okay,
hippo.
Feldegriff is great. We want
Thank you.
We want something a little bit spicier than that, right?
Yeah. We're gonna do a weird one. You know what I mean? And a lot of these are make a really mean commander something more fun. And a lot of them are just, is there a way to turn this into a more social contract-y type of commander? And I've had a lot of fun of reading through these, and we're gonna frankly, we might return to this pretty soon because I kind of dig the idea. But again, 35 entries, so click. And
it's a lot of entries. We have people doubling up.
Oh yeah. We got a couple people that are doubling and tripling up.
Well, what do we get?
Whether they're messaging. So we've got. All right, I gotta find which place this is in. Also, so I'm not sure if it's Chris Goodhind, Goodhind, but either way, Chris, I'm gonna read not your entire Twitter message because it's very long, but I'm gonna read a good portion of it. So, from Chris, hi Mike and Alex, I hope this finds you both well and enjoying the summer. I'd like to see both of you build a deck around Piru the Volatile or one of the new legends from D&D that spark interest for you. We're going to stick with Piru because that's the one that you mentioned. I have a playgroup that plays stacks and heavy interaction, which Alex's rules insight has been super helpful.
Oh.
The other half enjoys the group hug pieces that I run. Piru the Volatile deck seems interesting in the same vein of flooding the board with tokens for all. The plan to wipe the board and catapult back ahead with life games seemed explosive. Thanks for the work you put into the cast. It's always enjoyable to listen to. I love hearing you both having fun recording and talking about the in-game feels. Your fellow lover of Hun, Chris Goodhind. I swear I'm gonna get it right after I double check here.
Piru the Volatile is a 2 red, white, black.
Yeah.
So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 mana legendary creature, Elder Dragon, flying lifelink 7/7. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice Piru the Volatile unless you pay red, white, black. When Piru dies, it deals 7 damage to each non-legendary creature, and in parentheses, you'll then gain 7 life for each non-legendary creature.
Yeah. So, first of all, I'm very excited.
Yeah, how are we going to swing this one?
Yeah, this is going to be interesting because here's a couple of challenges we're going to have to figure out here. It's an 8 mana, non-green commander.
I'm thinking we're going to lean pretty heavily on recursion to allow it to die repeatedly.
Oh yeah. But I do also love the idea of giving lots of people tokens, giving people stuff.
Right, and then with that, because they have so much stuff, now we're getting a ton of life. Yeah.
All right. Well, Chris, thank you for giving us this project. Everybody, thank you very much for submitting in requests. And again, this is something we're going to do in the future because one of two things is going to happen. Either Alex and I are going to have a really fun time doing this deck next week, or we're going to have a miserable time trying to figure it out and we're going to want to do it again with another deck. So either way, thank you very much for listening and we'll see you next week.